In the early 1800s, in a quiet farming community in Adams, Tennessee, the Bell family began living through what would later become one of the most infamous hauntings in American history. The story of the Bell Witch isn't just folklore. It's a case that was documented, passed down, and retold for over 2 centuries. And for those who lived through it, it wasn't a ghost story. It was a nightmare that stretched on for years. The Bell family's troubles began in 1817. John Bell, the father, was tending to his fields one evening when he noticed a strange-looking animal sitting at the edge of the woods. It had the body of a dog, but the head of a rabbit, and it just sat there, staring at him. When John raised his gun and fired, the creature vanished. That night, knocking began on the outside walls of the Bell home, heavy, deliberate thuds that circled the cabin. John went outside to investigate, but there was never anyone there. The knocking turned into scratching. Scratching turned into rattling at the doors and windows, and soon the sounds were coming from inside. Footsteps echoed through empty rooms. Beds shook violently at night. The children began complaining of their blankets being ripped off in the dark. Then the attacks started. Invisible hands pinched and slapped the children as they tried to sleep. Their hair was pulled so hard that clumps were torn out. John's daughter Betsy became the primary target. She would scream in the night as welts and handprints appeared on her skin. It wasn't long before the unseen force revealed itself. The family began to hear a low, whispering voice in the dark corners of the home. At first, it was faint, just a murmur they couldn't quite make out. But over time, the voice grew clearer. It laughed, mocked, and eventually spoke in full sentences. When asked who it was, the voice said it was the spirit of Kate Batts, a woman who lived nearby and had been rumored to have feuded with the Bell family. Whether it truly was her spirit or something using her name, no one could ever say for sure. The Bell Witch, as it came to be known, had no limits. It sang hymns in the middle of the night. It recited sermons word for word. It taunted the children, repeated private conversations it shouldn't have known, and cursed John Bell with threats that one day it would kill him. The haunting was relentless. Neighbors heard the disturbances themselves. Guests in the home claimed they were slapped and shoved by invisible hands. News of the Bell Witch spread so far that even Andrew Jackson, who would later become president, is said to have visited the Bell farm to see it for himself. According to legend, his group was so terrified by the night's events that they fled before morning. As the years dragged on, the Bell family's health and sanity deteriorated. Betsy became so tormented that she broke off her engagement, claiming the witch wouldn't allow her to marry. John Bell's condition worsened. He developed facial twitches, difficulty swallowing, and mysterious fits of exhaustion. In 1820, he was found unconscious in bed. Beside him was a small vial of strange liquid that no one in the family recognized. The voice of the witch reportedly rang out in the room, laughing and declaring that she had poisoned him. John Bell died shortly after. At his funeral, mourners claimed they could hear the witch's voice singing loudly, mocking the family, celebrating his death. With John Bell gone, the torment began to lessen, but the damage had been done. For years, the Bell family had lived under siege by something that spoke, struck, and controlled their lives in ways no haunting ever had before. To this day, the Bell Witch remains a legend in Tennessee. The land where the Bell farm once stood is still said to be haunted. Locals claim to see strange lights in the woods, hear whispers when no one is there, and feel the presence of something watching them near the old Bell Witch Cave, a site tied to the story. Whether it was the restless spirit of Kate Batts, a curse brought on by something darker, or simply a tale that grew larger in the retelling, the fact remains. The Bell family was tormented by an entity that defied explanation, an entity strong enough to leave scars on history itself. And more than 200 years later, people still ask the same question. Who or what was the Bell Witch? In 2011, a woman named Latoya Ammons moved into a small rental home in Gary, Indiana, with her 3 children and her mother. From the outside, it was an ordinary one-story house on Carolina Street. Nothing about it looked unusual, but what the family experienced inside over the next few years has gone on to become one of the strangest and most disturbing haunting cases in modern America. It started small. Within weeks of moving in, the family began noticing footsteps echoing in the basement late at night. At first, they thought maybe it was the house settling or an animal, but then the noises started traveling. Footsteps on the basement stairs, creaks moving down the hallway when everyone was in bed. Doors would creak open on their own. Shadows moved in the corners of the living room when no one else was there. And during the winter, the windows filled with swarms of black flies. Dozens of them, clinging to the glass in the dead of January. No matter how many they killed, the insects returned. Things grew stranger with the children. The youngest boy began talking to someone only he could see, describing tall, shadowy figures pacing through the rooms. At night, the kids would wake screaming, saying they felt hands pressing down on their chests, holding them in place. Then came the incident that changed everything. One night, LaToya's mother walked into her granddaughter's bedroom and froze. The girl was asleep, but her body was floating several feet above the mattress. She screamed for LaToya, and together they dragged the girl back down. Terrified, they called for help. A local clairvoyant came to the house and told them what they were living with wasn't just one spirit. It was hundreds. She claimed the house was infested, crawling with entities, many of them violent. From that point forward, the activity escalated. The children would thrash and convulse as if something had taken control of them. Their eyes rolled back, their voices deepened, and they would say things no child should even know. Social workers were eventually called to the house. Even they reported seeing bizarre things. One caseworker claimed to have witnessed a boy walk backward up a wall and flip over into the middle of the room, landing on his feet. A nurse on duty at a hospital described one of the children suddenly being thrown against a wall by something invisible. Police officers called to the house described oily substances dripping from the blinds and furniture that couldn't be explained. One officer swore he saw a shadowy figure pacing the living room during his investigation. Every official that entered that house left with a story of their own. The Ammons family became desperate. They turned to their church, begging for help. Local priests began performing prayers and blessings, and eventually exorcisms. One priest, Father Michael Maginot, later described the house as a portal to hell, claiming that whatever lived there was not only targeting the family, but growing stronger with each day they remained inside. Eventually, LaToya Ammons and her children moved out. They left behind nearly all of their possessions, unwilling to risk taking anything with them that might carry the presence into their new home. For them, the nightmare ended, but the story of the house didn't. In 2014, paranormal investigator Zach Bagans purchased the property. He documented his time living there in a film called Demon House. According to Bagans, the activity was so extreme and so dangerous that he eventually had the house demolished. Today, the property is an empty lot, but locals still talk about it. People who live nearby claim that the land itself feels wrong, that even though the house is gone, the things that lurked inside never left. Whether it was mass hysteria, an elaborate hoax, or something truly unexplainable, the Ammons haunting remains one of the most chilling cases in recent history. A story where even social workers, police officers, and medical staff were forced to admit they witnessed things that defied reality. And for the Ammons family, that small rental home in Gary, Indiana, will forever be remembered as the place that nearly destroyed them. In the 1980s, a family living in Manchester, England, began experiencing something deeply unsettling in their home. It started with something small, something that seemed innocent at first. They had a little boy named Elton. Like most kids his age, he had a favorite toy, a brightly colored pull-along telephone with a smiling face and big plastic eyes that rolled back and forth when you dragged it across the floor. For Elton, it was just a toy. But for his parents, it quickly became the center of something they could never explain. The first incident happened late one evening. The family was gathered in the living room when they heard the unmistakable sound of the toy's little bell ringing from upstairs. Elton's mother looked at her husband confused because the phone had been left in the boy's bedroom. At first, they brushed it off, thinking maybe the boy had been playing with it and left it somewhere it could shift and jingle on its own. But then it rang again, this time louder, and when they checked Elton's room, the toy was still sitting where he'd left it, untouched. No string was pulled, no one was near it, yet the receiver had lifted slightly off the base as if someone had just picked it up and set it back down. From that night on, the strange activity grew more frequent. The toy phone would ring at random hours, sometimes in the dead of night, waking the entire family. Elton's parents tried taking the batteries out, only to realize it didn't even run on batteries. It was a simple mechanical toy, no electronics at all. There was no reason it should make a sound on its own. Then things escalated. The toy began to move by itself across the floor. Elton's mother once walked into the living room and saw it rolling slowly across the carpet, the plastic eyes clicking back and forth with each step. She thought maybe Elton had pulled it and let it go, but when she looked down, Elton wasn't even in the room. He was in the kitchen with his grandmother. The family started hearing things. The faint sound of a young girl's laughter echoing through the halls, soft but clear enough that everyone heard it. Elton began talking to someone who wasn't there. He would sit in his room and whisper into the plastic receiver, pausing as if listening to someone respond on the other end. When his parents asked who he was talking to, Elton would just shrug and say, "The girl." It wasn't long before the disturbances spread beyond the toy. Doors creaked open in the middle of the night. Lights flicked on and off by themselves. Small objects, books, glasses, remote controls were found in different places than where they'd been left. The family constantly felt watched. The tension in the house grew heavier with each passing week. One night, Elton's father woke up to the sound of footsteps in the hallway. He went to check, only to find the toy phone sitting in the middle of the floor at the top of the stairs. He was sure it had been left downstairs before bed. As he bent down to pick it up, he swore he heard the faint click of the receiver lifting from its cradle, even though no one had touched it. The breaking point came when Elton's mother walked into her son's bedroom and found the toy phone on the bed next to him. Elton was fast asleep, but the receiver was resting against his ear, as if someone had gently placed it there for him to listen. The family was terrified. They began to believe their home was haunted, and that the spirit of a young girl was using Elton's toy as a way to communicate. They tried to bless the house to get rid of whatever was there, but the activity continued. Eventually, they moved out, leaving much of their furniture and the toy phone behind. To this day, Elton's parents believe that phone was never just a toy. For them, it became a channel, a connection to something they couldn't see and didn't want to understand. What started as a harmless piece of plastic turned into the single most terrifying object in their lives. And the question that still lingers is this: if that little girl's voice wasn't coming from their son's imagination, then who or what was he talking to on the other end of that phone?